The high-speed train you are riding will have an accident in 1 minute. Now you have a chance to choose between survival or death. What is your choice? Due to receiving such a message before death, Wen Ning, who chose to live, was drawn into a game called SmileGame. In order to live an extra day in reality, she constantly accumulates points in the game to obtain opportunities to draw skill cards. Her skill card art style is only slightly different from others. Skill cards in the hands of others. Thunderbolt summoned, please invite Sanqing Immortal skill card in Wen Ning's hand. Play a piece of cotton, do you want to dance keywords of the novel? My card is not serious without pop-ups, my card is not serious. Download the complete TXT collection, my card is not serious. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Draw cards. The kind that bounces cotton. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Draw cards. The kind that bounces cotton. The high-speed train you are riding will have an accident in 1 minute, and now you have a chance to choose between survival or death. Countdown. 30 seconds, your choice is to live. The D0617 train traveling from Wenqing South Station to Ningqing East Station collided violently with the mountain due to track deviation, resulting in the death of all passengers inside the train. Under the pressure of the stone, the damaged phone suddenly lit up. The gods have received your strong will to survive. Now download the SmileGame app. SmileGame has been downloaded and player information has been loaded. Player Wen Ning's information has been confirmed and stored. Game loading. Welcome all newcomers to join the game. I am your assistant Xiao Wei. Next is the prompt time given by the gods to the newcomers. 1. Each instance completed will extend the lifespan by 1 week. The points obtained after completing the dungeon can be spent or traded on their own in the SmileGame App Store. 3. The level determination of dungeon points is influenced by the player's task progress and is linked to the will of the gods. Assistant Xiao Wei will only appear when the player triggers the draw mechanism, except when summoned by the player. 5. Skill cards can be used to resist ghosts and monsters, but there are casting conditions. 6. Death in the game, death in reality. God has given you new life and hopes that you can strive to survive in the game and win the favor of the gods. The gods will always gaze at you. Dungeon. Xinghua Town, difficulty. Normal, task. Please survive in Xinghua Town for 7 days. The above is the content of this dungeon. Have a nice day. Wen Ning opened her eyes and found herself at the entrance of Xinghua Town. Like her, there were 2 other people. She remembered that she had died when a high-speed train derailed and a stone pierced through her abdomen. It seems that the news she received before her death was not a new type of fraud, but rather the starting condition for this smiling game. Wen Ning pondered and heard a burst of crying in her ear. Woo-woo, I don't want to die, I want to go back. The girl beside her is not very receptive, and her mentality has collapsed. Out of kindness, Wen Ning handed out a piece of paper and comforted, "It's okay. Is there a possibility that we actually died once?" As soon as these words were spoken, the girl cried even louder. "Hey, girl, stop crying. Didn't you say that by completing the game, you can continue to live?" The yellow-haired man with okay bandages on his face comforted him in a loud voice. The girl wiped away the tears on her face and asked, "What should we do next?" "Yes, are we going to enter town?" "Of course. Don't go in." The girl looked at Wen Ning in shock upon hearing this and said, "But that little Wei didn't say anything. She wants to survive in Xinghua Town for 7 days." Wen Ning smiled and said, "The pattern of young people needs to be opened up, and the town entrance is also a part of the town." The girl suddenly realized after listening, "My name is Li Manju, thank you for the tissue just now." Seeing someone introduce themselves, Huang Mao also said, "My name is Zhang San, what's your name, girl?" "Warm Lime." "Miss Wen Ning, your mind is still spinning fast. That voice didn't ask us to enter the town, we just need to make a fool of ourselves." Before Zhang San could finish speaking, the voice of Assistant Xiao Wei jumped out, interrupting the three of them from thinking about a card bug. Players are requested to enter the memory of Xinghua Town and live for 7 days, otherwise they will die immediately. The three of them surprisingly heard the sound of gritting their teeth from the calm electronic sound, and even emphasized the word NEI for 3 seconds before and after. Ah! What should we do? Zhang San awkwardly scratched his head, while Li Manju turned her gaze to Wen Ning. Cold salad, you can only go in. Wen Ning shrugged helplessly and walked towards the town. Zhang San and Li Manju followed closely behind, and as they saw the people wearing birthday clothes around them, they gradually leaned towards Wen Ning. Paper-tied people come in different sizes, including men and women. Their smiling faces were tinged with 2 Highland reds, and their gaze fell neatly towards the entrance of the town, making way for a passage for 3 people on both sides. The corridor leads directly to the locust tree hanging with red silk bells in the central tree altar of the town. To escape from the paper-tied formation, one must detour through the tree altar. Wen Ning didn't take 2 steps before stopping. Zhang San, who was holding on to Wen Ning's left hand, suddenly became excited and said, "Sister, what's wrong? Is there something wrong?" Li Manju, who was close to Wen Ning's right hand and almost hanging from her, immediately raised her ears and looked around. Where? Wen Ning almost squeezed out a sentence from between her teeth. "I said. Can you walk normally?" "Ah haha." The two of them looked at each other and immediately released Wen Ning's hand with an awkward smile. "Sorry, I'm a bit mischievous." Lying down, Miss Manju, the paper figure behind you just seemed to have moved. Zhang San, who was about to explain, glanced at him unintentionally and was so scared that he blurted out the essence of Chinese culture. "What?" Li Manju's frightened voice suddenly turned back 8 degrees high, just in time to face the paper man's face with a double ponytail tied up. The mouth of the double ponytailed paper man gradually widened, and Li Manju could even clearly see the internal structure of the paper man. "Are you idle and living too long?" At the moment when the paper man's mouth was about to close, Wen Ning pulled Li Manju into her arms and successfully saved her. "Sorry. And thank you." Li Manju looked at Wen Ning in shock and gratitude. What is this situation? Although Zhang San's legs trembled with fear, he still protected Wen Ning and Li Manju behind him. The paper figure, who was supposed to face the town entrance, now neatly faces the three of them, with a pair of dark eyes staring straight at them, and a smile on his face gradually reaching his ears. At the moment when Wen Ning saw the paper figure set off, she threw Zhang San and Li Manju aside and narrowly avoided the attack. "Wen Ning, be careful behind your back." Wen Ning, who had only stabilized her figure after rolling to the side, heard Zhang San's voice. She looked back and saw 3 paper figures jumping up in the air and rushing towards her. Congratulations to player Wen Ning for receiving the lucky draw blessings from the gods. Your calmness and protection of teammates in the face of danger are deeply loved by the gods. Please make a choice within 30 seconds. 1. Draw cards immediately. 2. Keep the chance to draw cards. Note. Can be used for app lottery, can be kept up to 10 times, accumulated 10 times will automatically trigger 10 consecutive draws in the game. Failure to make a choice within the specified time will default to keeping the cards. Countdown starts. 30. Everything around her was like pressing the pause button at the moment Assistant Xiao Wei appeared. The paper man maintains the movement of leaping into the air. Zhang Sanjing poses with her Kong's hand. Li Manju's eyes widened in disbelief as she covered her mouth. The sound of countdown in the ear, constantly urging Wen Ning to make a choice. Countdown. 4, 3, 2, draw cards now. Hi, your willpower has been received by Xiao Wei. The white camellia bloomed in front of the warm lemon, and a diamond-shaped card with a golden edge and flowing light floated above the stamen. As the petals gradually dissipate, this floating card also falls into the palm of Wen Ning's hand. Congratulations to player Wen Ning for obtaining a rare skill card. Bouncing Cotton, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. I Don't Cry, I Play Cotton. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. I Don't Cry, I Play Cotton card. Play a piece of cotton usage. 2 out of 2 card skill. The holder sings the song of bouncing cotton, which will not be harmed by monsters during its existence. The side effect will randomly attract nearby monsters. Note: the card can be kept in a card bag and can be summoned to select cards at any time during use. Xiao Wei wishes you a pleasant game here and looks forward to your next lucky draw. Time began to flow, and the paper figures soaring in the air rushed towards Wen Ning. The head of the paper figure pricked with the boy suddenly cracked open, and a green-gray hand rushed out from it, rushing towards Wen Ning's head with lightning speed. However, it shrank back as it was about to touch Wen Ning. The paper figure leaping into the air fell to the ground with a snap, motionless, and the other paper figures were even more so. Wen Ning stood up from the ground with a serious expression and looked at the people walking towards her. That person looks over 60 years old, with a hunched figure, goat whiskers on his face, wearing a navy blue robe and coat, and holding a white lantern in his hand. He narrowed his eyes with a smile and said, "I'm sure these are the friends of the young master when he was studying abroad. Miss Wen, Miss Li, and Mr. Zhang have been delayed by some things and are coming late. It's getting dark soon. Come with me back to the mansion." "I'm not leaving," Zhang San snorted coldly. "We all bring these moving paper figures to welcome the guests. Who knows if we can still live with you when we go back? If it weren't for us being lucky just now, you would have been able to see us." The old man's smile faded and his sharp gaze swept over Zhang San's face. Then, with a smile, he stroked his beard and said, "Hey, young man, what are you talking about? Where is the paper man? How could it not be there? It's right here." Faced with questioning, Zhang San turned around angrily, but his face turned pale when he saw the empty town entrance. "No, this is not true, just now it was clearly." Wen Ning pinched Zhang San's mouth into a duck's mouth and said with a smile, "Where did the paper man come from? There has always been only one tree here. A locust tree tied with red silk and hung with bells." "Can." Zhang San wanted to say something more, but his voice gradually faded under Wen Ning's sharp gaze. "Just now you had hysteria, no paper figures, right?" Zhang San wanted to shake his head and reject Wen Ning's words, but his gaze unintentionally met the old man's murky and hollow eyes. He was full of excitement and nodded wildly with tears in his eyes, afraid that the old man would not believe him. Wen Ning then apologized and said, "Thank you for taking us back to the mansion. How do you address us?" "My surname is Tian, just call me Uncle Tian." Uncle Tian walked a few steps with the lantern in his hand and casually turned around, saying, "Miss Wen, you must take care of your friend. If his hysteria says something inappropriate in the Li mansion, Madam will be unhappy." "Yes, yes," Wen Ning quickly responded. Under the leadership of Uncle Tian, the 3 of them entered the Li mansion. After they parted ways, Zhang Sankai thanked them. "Wen Ning, thank you just now. No need, saving you is just afraid that you will implicate me." Wen Ning gave a shallow response and began to look around. Creak. The wooden door was pushed open, and a maid wearing apricot-colored clothes and a double bun stood by the door, making a "please" gesture to the 3 of them. "My servant's name is Autumn and Summer. The 3 of you have arranged your accommodation properly. Please come with me." A few people walked through the winding corridor and met with other maids as they passed by. Some of the maids briefly exchanged sympathy with each other when they saw the 3 of them. Passing through the 3rd arch, the 3 finally arrived at the door of the wing. The wing rooms are connected side by side, and there is no significant difference except for the copper locks in front of each door. "These are the rooms you will be staying in the future, please allocate them yourself," Qiuxia said as she took out the key with a sign hanging from her sleeve and handed it to Wen Ning and the others. 360-748-074. Wen Ning quickly glanced over and waited for Zhang San and Li Manju to finish selecting before she took the final number, 748. The three of you have selected the wing rooms and are leaving for autumn and summer. The maid bowed to the three of them one by one, and at that moment, Wen Ning spoke up, "Wait a minute. We have suddenly visited and have not yet paid our respects to the master and lady. May I trouble Sister Qiuxia to take us on a trip now?" The act of bowing in autumn and summer suddenly looked up at Wen Ning, who was smiling lightly. Seeing her sincerity, she then turned her gaze to Zhang San and Li Manju. Although I don't know why Wen Ning said this, Zhang San instinctively continued, "Ah, yes, yes." After receiving answers from the other two, Qiuxia's expression froze for a moment and said, "You three have intentions. Although I don't know where you learned that there is a lady in the Li mansion, I will convey this message to the master tomorrow and arrange for the three to meet with him. It's not early tonight, so let's rest. It's only a few hours now." Wen Ning looked at the sky and said something. The Li mansion stipulated that no man, woman, old or young should leave the house without reason during the Shusher period, and the maids should retire. After Qiuxia finished speaking, she walked with a gust of wind on her feet, as if there were fierce beasts chasing her behind her. Zhang San pointed to Qiuxia at the corner of his mouth. Just as he wanted to roast with Li Manju, he saw the other party's stall keeper perfunctory and entered the room. He glanced in the direction of Wen Ning again and found that she had already entered the room. He silently swallowed her words and pushed Sanlu 0 on Wen Ning's right into the room. The wing room is said to be big or small. When you enter, you can see a round table at first glance, and when you look to the right, it is the bedroom. The layout of the three rooms was similar, and when Wen Ning walked into the bedroom, she saw a heart-wrenching scene where the bed was placed opposite the mirror. The ancient said, "Bronze mirrors cannot face the bed." Wen Ning, who was deeply influenced by the ancients, thoughtfully transformed this layout by adjusting the orientation of the table where the bronze mirrors were placed while flipping them over to face a semi-open window. After a meal of operation, Wen Ning rubbed her shoulders and collapsed peacefully on the bed. Before going to bed, she even pointed her shoe tips outward towards the table. At the hour of high, her fair arms peeked out of the mirror and grabbed the window sill, and a person wearing a qipao crawled out of the mirror. She turned her head, her red eyes revealing confusion. According to the previous plot, she should be by the bed as soon as she comes out, but who can tell her why she is outside the house now? The female witch climbed into the room through the window in anger, intending to climb the bed, only to find that the people in the room were sleeping very cautiously. The shoes didn't fly randomly, and the tips of the shoes didn't point towards the bed. Looking at the sweet sleeping human in front of her, tears of displeasure flowed from the corners of the woman's mouth. It can be seen but not eaten, which makes the female monster very angry. Coincidentally, Wen Ning, who was sleeping in bed, was flipped over by the scattered hair of the female monster and gave her a slap. The female monster was blinded and glared angrily at Wen Ning, her hair flying with anger. She needs to give the human in front of her a good look. Wen Ning woke up due to congestion in her head. When she opened her eyes and saw all the upside-down furniture, she thought she had triggered another instance. It wasn't until she was tied up and placed upright by the female monster that she realized she had just been knocked down. Seeing her appearance, the woman's smile gradually became unrestrained, and she uttered the line that had been threatening players for a long time. "Jie jie jie, even if you shout your throat out, no one will come to save you. I don't scream, I play cotton." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Limit 3 Choose 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Limit 3 Choose 1. Are you afraid? The female monster suddenly got stuck and stood in front of the bed, staring at the bound Wen Ning with big eyes and small eyes in disbelief. At this moment, the next door screamed like a stone thrown into the lake, causing a wave of waves. Listening to the constant screams, the female monster nodded in satisfaction at the effect and then grinned at Wen Ning. Underneath her withered hair, a pale face was exposed to the air, with tears gradually flowing from her red eyes, her nose slightly wrinkled, and her purple lips parted, revealing bloody teeth. The scene was extremely impactful. Despite this, I did not receive any frightened cries from Wen Ning. The woman was very dissatisfied when she saw the situation. She jumped 3 times in place and suddenly rushed to Wen Ning's eyes. Ah! Wen Ning, bound by her hair, blinked and had no emotional fluctuations. Instead, her gaze fell on the woman's feet and she smiled. "Why don't you go to bed? Is it because you don't want to?" The female monster, who had been hit hard by her weakness, was furious and pulled her hair to the edge of the bed. She pressed her face against this side and exhaled a cold breath. "Did you realize that the toe of your shoe is not aligned with the bed, making it impossible to go to bed?" Wen Ning, who was not afraid, continued to stimulate the other person. "Seeing your appearance, it's not in vain for me to adjust the position of the toe of my shoe. You can only control me with your hair. From when I woke up until now, you have tied me up and inverted me. The most outrageous thing you have done is to pull me to the bed and face you. I guess it right." Before Wen Ning could finish her sentence, she noticed that her hair, which was holding her body, had loosened. She moved twice towards the center of the bed and continued, "If I didn't get out of bed, you wouldn't hurt me." After finishing speaking, the atmosphere briefly fell silent, and a woman's eerie hoarse voice rang out, "That's right, I can't get to bed, nor can I get you out of bed, but I can make your bed no longer exist." The woman's eerie hair instantly covered the entire room, her purple-black nails suddenly grew, and her smile gradually became ferocious. A strand of hair brushed past Wen Ning's ear and plunged into the wall. Wen Ning wiped away the blood on her cheek from the scratch and silently mourned for 3 seconds in her heart. It seems to be overstimulated. Immediately after, another strand of hair wrapped around the edge of the bed, and with a little force from the female monster, the bed pole was directly removed. Let's scream, I love the sound of human fear the most. The witch drifted to the front of the Wen Ning bed, her 3 strands of hair turning into force cones, piercing through the bed board. Now, Wen Ning collapsed to the ground along with the split bed board. The slender nails of the female witch touched Dawning's face, full of nostalgia, and said, "It sounds great, I can still keep your beautiful face. I've said it all, I won't scream, I'll play cotton." Wen Ning's eyes showed helplessness as a diamond-shaped card with a gilded edge appeared in her hand, and she only heard a sound of bouncing cotton. The woman's hand was bounced away, and Wen Ning lowered her head to look at her skill card and continued singing, pop cotton, half a pound of cotton bounces into 8, 2, 8. No matter how the female monster fights, she still sits in place unscathed, until the sentence, "That girl is going to get married," rang out. The door to her residence opened with a loud bang. "Who is singing and playing cotton?" At that moment, a strong wind blew through, and a girl in pink drifted in. Her gaze swept over the original ghostly people and landed on Wen Ning. This glance almost made Wen Ning bite her tongue. She was calm on the surface, but extremely panicked and anxious in the heart. After repeating it for a while, this skill will disappear. Accompanied by the sound of the second stage of warm lemon popping cotton, a pool of black water fell from the beam of the house, and a swollen man stared at the lotus leaves emerged from inside. "Who is singing and playing cotton?" She was filled with question marks and lowered her head to glance at the skill card in her hand. Wen Ning let out a good guy. Card play, a piece of cotton usage. 1/2 card skill. The holder sings the song of bouncing cotton, which will not be harmed by monsters during its existence. The side effect will randomly attract nearby monsters. P.S. There is no limit to the number of monsters. That P.S. font is so small that it's easy to overlook if you don't look carefully. You shouldn't be thinking about testing skill cards. This wave of her is really just playing around. 3 eerie confrontations. After the last melody fell, all eyes fell on Wen Ning's head. Hi, Wen Ning can only grit her head and say hello. "Sing, why don't you continue singing?" 748 Yuan dwelling strange people looked at her with disdain. Warm and cold sweat flowed, shaking my head wildly. With just one more skill, you might even be able to form a football team and win the world championship. Suddenly, the water ghost leaned in front of Wen Ning and glanced a few times. Is it your kid singing about playing cotton? It's so beautiful. Speak up, do you want the three of us to eat you? Said the woman in pink, who was eerily floating in the sky, speaking calmly. Why don't you three fight each other? Just as Wen Ning spoke, she received 3 cold gazes. Do you want to reap the benefits of the fisherman? In my opinion, it's better to split the spoils. I'll make up my mind for that face first. The water ghost's chubby face leaned against Wen Ning's shoulder and let out a chubby smirk. No, that face belongs to me. It's mine. San Gui started arguing again, and in the end, they all agreed to let Wen Ning make a decision. Choose me, otherwise. The 748 indigenous peoples tore off the bed boards with their bare hands. Oh, little sister, choose me, otherwise this will be your end. The woman in pink twisted the bronze mirror into a ball and threw it to the ground on the spot. The remaining water ghosts directly made Wen Ning experience the feeling of drowning, and no matter how Wen Ning chooses, she will die. In this extreme situation of choosing 1 out of 3, Wen Ning weakly said, why not play mahjong in 5 sets and win 3, who wins and who eats me? Mahjong, not bad. The woman in pink nodded eerily, then you're one less person. If you win, you'll choose a pleasing one to eat. Wen Ning was about to cry without tears, and she gritted her scalp. Until the next morning, the door of the room was knocked on, and the winner had not yet been determined. Wen Ning opened the door with her huge black circles under her eyes, and Li Manju threw herself into her arms, crying loudly. Woo-woo, I thought your dog brought it. We knocked on your door early in the morning and you haven't heard back. If we don't come out again, we'll break through the door, explained Zhang San on the side. Wen Ning lazily yawned and explained, I played mahjong with San Gui all night last night and only went to bed at dawn. What's up? Mahjong. Li Manju was puzzled. Wen Ning gave a brief overview of what happened last night, and Zhang San listened with great respect. That's because those 3 tricks ruined the cards all night and didn't finish a game until dawn. Wen Ning nodded and asked the slightly disheveled two, what was your situation last night? I drew a shield-type skill card last night and sat in the corner watching the eerie spell take me all night. Li Manju recalled last night's situation and added, my skill card's casting condition is to throw the card out, and the card is called Unstoppable, without any name. Li Manju nodded until she finished speaking, and Zhang San also nodded, saying, indeed, my card is an Thunderbolt summoned attacking card. Just throw the card out, no need to sing or play cotton. Wen Ning felt like she had been hit by 2 arrows in her knee. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. She's quite capable of doing it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. She's quite capable of doing it. Wen Ning. Her card art style is not serious when combined. By the way, are you looking for me for anything? Just. Before Zhang San could speak, his whole body was knocked to the ground. Are you sick? You haven't grown any eyes. Zhang San got up from the ground and rubbed his buttocks as he said, you're really a person. You look like a dog, and you're still a fanatic in cosplay, the legend of Zhen Huan, who doesn't uphold male virtues. Wen Ning. Oh, my lord's raised buttocks have all fallen into 4 petals, death. Death in autumn and summer. It's human. The man was too frightened to speak clearly. Upon hearing of the dead person, Li Manju was so frightened that she didn't even need to open her hand to cover her eyes. Where is it? Wen Ning spoke up to inquire. The man pointed to the nearby rockery and stuttered, I met Autumn Summer here last night. When we were tired of playing, we went to bed. She woke up this morning and Autumn Summer. You're playing pretty well, kid. Zhang San couldn't help but exclaim upon hearing this. Wen Ning nodded in agreement and said, "It's quite fancy. Take us to take a look." The three of them led by this madman to the rockery, where the bodies of Autumn and Summer stayed. The body was cruelly fractured by the killer, with both hands and feet intertwined with intestines and tied in a knot. I don't know if the killer had any malicious intentions, so he forcefully twisted Qiusha's head 180 degrees and turned it to the back. My eyes were gouged out and my face was scratched. Li Manju couldn't bear to spit out a rainbow on the spot. Zhang San has a better ability to accept, provided that he ignores his knee that is about to kneel. Wen Ning was also impacted by the scene. She furrowed her brows and clenched her fists, forcing herself not to vomit. "Wen Ning girl, you're amazing." Zhang San pulled the rockery and straightened up. "I'm not afraid of this scene. From now on, you're me." "God." Wen Ning smiled slightly. "JPG, alright, don't be poor anymore, quickly find someone." "No need, Miss Wen." The familiar voice made everyone present turn their heads, and Uncle Tian walked through the crowd with his back bent. Originally, while the three of them were investigating, the people attracted by the screams of the madman had already surrounded the area near the rockery. "You guys should handle this here." Uncle Tian gave a few commands to the rough servants behind him, and then smiled kindly. "Miss Wen, you three can come with me." Wen Ning saw a servant with a large arm and a thick waist knock the madman unconscious, carrying him on his shoulder in a burlap-like manner. One of the red mandarin duck belly pockets on the madman's waist did not hang firmly and fell to the ground. "Let's go." After seeing Wen Ning leave, Li Manju and Zhang San followed closely behind. "How many times this month is it? I'm not sure why people have been dying lately. Hey, bad luck. These people always cause trouble during the ritual. It's madam who has come to take revenge." Wen Ning, who was crossing the crowd, heard a particularly prominent sentence amidst a group of discussions about the dead and worship. "Madam, revenge. Qiu Xia said that Li Mansion doesn't have a wife, so why do you say that the wife is seeking revenge?" Tian Shuzeng said goodbye to talking recklessly, but his wife didn't like to listen. "Does this lady really exist? Miss Wen, what's wrong?" Uncle Tian's words pulled Wen Ning's thoughts back, and he stared at her with a pair of murky black eyes, a kind smile on his face. "I didn't sleep well last night." "Ah. I see." Uncle Tian nodded and waved to the maid beside him. "Go to the warehouse and bring some tranquil incense to Miss Wen's room." "Thank you very much, Uncle Tian." "Miss Wen, you don't need to be polite. You just heard the servant say that the Li Mansion is always dead this month. In fact, I don't know which new arrivals it is. Every year, a few people die during the Flower God Festival. Tian Shu's calm demeanor, coupled with his calm tone, instantly captured the chill in his heart. "Hee, but it's okay. As long as you don't go out at night, there shouldn't be any accidents. When it's time, everyone, please." The door to the living room was pushed open, and the person sitting at the top suddenly regained a lot of energy when they saw the three of them. "I've heard all about what happened just now, Li Shaokong. The lack of strict discipline from the servants makes you laugh." Li Shaokong said, picking up the teacup at hand and taking a sip of tea to moisten his throat. "Sit down. You were invited by Liang Heir to visit Xinhua town. Originally, Liang Heir was supposed to take you to the town to play, but Liang Heir is currently busy worshipping the flower god and cannot take you out." "I'm really sorry." Wen Ning shook her head indifferently and was forced by the game to reveal her identity. She didn't even have a personal biography, and the later she met this young master from the Li family, the less likely she was to reveal her true identity. With a smile on her face, she said, "If you want to apologize, it's better for us to apologize to Mr. Li. It's really unfortunate that we didn't bring any gifts during our sudden visit." "Oh, don't say that. Liang Heir has been solitary since childhood, and taking care of him while studying abroad was the biggest gift for me. You're welcome, we didn't plan to stay long either. It's time to set off now. As soon as the words fell, Li Shaokong stopped speaking and stared blankly at Wen Ning, saying, "You can't go, you can't go." Wen Ning remained silent, just raising her hand. A group of maids, servants, and guards arrived, with empty eyes blocking the door and repeating, "You can't go, you can't go." Ding Xiaowei's prompt sound started, and time stopped at this moment. Player Wen Ning's provocative attitude towards the game rules successfully caught the attention of the gods and received feedback that she was quite capable. Bang bang, congratulations to the player for getting a chance to draw cards. Please choose. 1. Draw cards now. 2. Keep the cards. What is your choice? Retained. Hi, Xiaowei has received it. We will keep this draw opportunity, with 1 out of 10 of the remaining draws. Player Wen Ning, please continue to work hard, the gods have been watching you, looking forward to your next performance. Time flows, and the group of servants rush into the front hall like a tide of fish. Squeeze Zhang San, Li Manju, and Wen Ning into cans of sardine. Help! Just as Li Manju spoke, the person was pushed aside and covered up. On Zhang San's side, he was even more crowded with stars in his eyes. With a soft click, Wen Ning changed his tone and said, "I said I'll leave in 6 days." The servants dispersed in unison, and Li Shaokong regained his consciousness. "Oh, that would be great time to attend the Flower God Festival. I'll have Uncle Tian take you to the town for a tour." "Thank you." Li Shaokong smiled and summoned Uncle Tian, giving him a few commands before saying, "Cough, cough, I should also rest now. Let's all step back." Before leaving, Wen Ning suddenly turned around and said, "Mr. Li, why haven't you seen Madam?" Wen Ning, who turned back against the light, made Li Shaokong dizzy. He vaguely saw his long-deceased wife. He couldn't help but cough and trembled as he pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket to cover his mouth. After finally calming down, he said, "Madam went when young heir was still young. I haven't remarried because of my poor health. I wonder who Miss Wen asked about Madam." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Mrs. Lan, a famous beauty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Mrs. Lan, a famous beauty. I just got some small items that women like while studying abroad. I wanted to personally give them to my wife, but I never thought. No problem, Uncle Tian, let's take a few of you down. Upon hearing Wen Ning's explanation, Li Shaokong helped the chair sit down and weakly supported his forehead, saying. The vermilion door gradually closed, and Li Shaokong's eyes became extremely fierce, as if he was about to tear the 3 people outside the door into pieces. Wen Ning, who had just stepped out of the gate of the Li mansion, trembled as she touched her arm and whispered, "It's a bit cold." "Master Zhang, Miss Wen, Miss Li, the old servant still has something to do. This is about accompanying a few of you to stroll around the town." Before Uncle Tian could finish speaking, Li Manju interrupted, it's okay, you're busy with it." As Uncle Tian left, Li Manju suddenly collapsed and said, "Woo-woo, Uncle Tian has finally left. He's so scary, like the teaching director who stood silently outside the window in high school." One sentence triggered everyone's nightmare. After a brief silence, Wen Ning suggested taking separate actions. According to the conventional routine of RPG games, the 3 of them can't trigger the plot by staying together all the time. Wen Ningcai, Zhang San, and Li Manju parted ways at the entrance of the Li mansion, and were forced to trigger the plot by an old lady who bumped into porcelain. On the bustling street, Wen Ning couldn't figure out why this old lady could accurately target her. "Child, my child, you return my child." The people around her were all attracted by the sound, and Wen Ning struggled to pull her hand. Unexpectedly, the other party was grabbing more and more tightly, and she even shouted, "If you don't return my child, you won't want to leave." The onlookers who didn't know why heard this and looked at Wen Ning with condemning eyes. Wen Ning's pupils earthquake. Why is this girl who looks like a fairy still robbing others' children? Yes, yes. Wen Ning cracked open on the spot and said, no, listen to me explain. The masses refused to accept it and still stand at the moral high ground, pointing and pointing. Wen Ning smashed her jar and said, oh, that's not what you said when you sold your child to me. In one sentence, the wind suddenly changes direction. Auntie collapsed on the spot. You told me that the child wants to live a good life as a flower boy and follow the flower god, it won't be so difficult. But you lied to me, you killed him, you killed him. Wen Ning was shocked and didn't expect a casual sentence to be answered. In the blink of an eye, Wen Ning thought of an answer. She reached out and lightly placed her hand on the woman's shoulder, saying in a voice that only two people could hear, I have received professional certification. I only buy, not kill, unless you see it. Auntie shook off Wen Ning's hand and tears streamed down her face with excitement. I saw it with my own eyes, you dug out my daughter's intestines. My daughter's eyes were fixed on me before she died, she hated me, she hated me. The flower god is fake, it's your group of Li. Before Auntie could finish speaking, she was covered by an old man who rushed out of the crowd. The old man's red eyes turned red and he said to Wen Ning, sorry girl, my husband is crazy. Everyone, let's go, let's go. When the onlookers heard that it was crazy, they immediately lost their interest in watching the excitement and dispersed in a flurry. The old man apologized frantically to Wen Ning, but the old lady suddenly went crazy and bit the old man's tiger mouth, struggling to let out her voice. You, the livestock of the Li family, must die hard. You deserve revenge from Lady Lan. The flower god is fake, is it fake? The old man quickly changed his hand to cover Aunt's mouth, apologized to the people around him again, and forcefully dragged Aunt away. Wen Ning's tactics were backwards, as he came out of the Li mansion and was mistaken for someone from the Li mansion, triggering the plot. This smile game is even more RPG than RPG games. She stared at the direction in which the two of them were leaving, and suddenly felt someone looking at her. Wen Ning looked around and didn't find any suspicious people, so she set off again. The entire Xinhua town, in order to welcome the flower god, is adorned with red silk and tied with octagonal bells with red ropes in the front, middle, and back of these red silk. This bell sounds strange, it won't make a sound even when the wind blows. Those street vendors will deliberately leave the middle path open for people to walk on. In front of each stall, Wen Ning can always see a humanoid item placed in the most prominent place. Such gadgets as paper cuttings figures, clay figurines, human masks, etc., but the weird thing is that their faces all face the same direction. This reminded Wen Ning of the paper-lined people welcoming guests on both sides of the road when she first entered the town. At the end of the street where the flower god is welcomed, there is a locust tree hanging with red silk and bells at the entrance of the town. Why tree, wood-trapped ghost. Wen Ning stood in front of the altar and carefully observed that there seemed to be traces of flipping in the soil at the root of the locust tree. As soon as she was about to get closer, she noticed someone approaching. Wen Ning was taken aback and with precise movements, she subdued the other person. Oh my, it's me, Miss Wen Ning. It's me. Zhang San was pressed to the ground and shouted loudly. Ah, it's you, an outsider. Wen Ning calmly released his hand, dusted off the dust from his body, and looked at Li Manju. What have you found? Li Manju nodded and said, people in the entire Xinhua town don't go out late at night, except for the Flower God Festival. The Flower God Festival falls on this weekend, which is the 7th day we will be staying. Also, regarding autumn and summer, I have learned from multiple sources that the people who die during the Flower God Festival in Li Mansion every year look similar to autumn and summer. Zhang San rubbed his face, which had been in close contact with the ground, and said with a resentful expression, I found out that this Flower God Festival only emerged in nearly 20 years. 10 years ago, the master of the Li Mansion was not Li Shaokong, but a person named Li Kai. His eldest son, Li Qingming, and youngest son, Li Shaokong. Also, there used to be a wealthy family named Zhang and a county magistrate in Xinhua town. However, 13 years ago today, the entire Zhang family died tragically, and that county magistrate. Zhang San waved at Wen Ning and Li Manju as he spoke, and the two quickly leaned in and stretched their ears to listen. He also died, but he will die tomorrow. I heard he died extremely tragically. He seemed to have been torn apart by something, and the walls of the entire room were covered in blood at that time. Upon hearing this, Li Manju shook her head frantically and exclaimed, "This county magistrate has truly cracked open." Wen Ning was left speechless by her words. The two of them finished speaking and stared at Wen Ning with expectant eyes, waiting for her to share. After Wen Ning briefly summarized his experience of being hit with porcelain, Zhang San's entire face felt as uncomfortable as constipation. He pondered for a moment and suddenly patted his thigh as he was about to approach the gate of the Li mansion. I remember. Li Manju. Wen Ning. Mrs. Lan, Li Qingming's wife, Li Shaokong's sister. Law, the third miss of the Zhang family, a famous beauty in Xinhua town. She died tonight 20 years ago. Li Manju. Wen Ning. Oh. The three of them hurriedly arrived at Wen Ning's residence. 748 was preparing to sort out their thoughts, but as soon as they pushed the door, they saw 748's dilapidated appearance. Zhang San and Li Manju brushed together to look at Wen Ning. Wen Ning calmly closed the door and said, "Go to Li Manju's place." So the three of them strung a string of clues in room 074. If it were true, according to the woman's claim that Lady Lan's revenge and the Flower God Festival were fake, the Li family would play a very new role in this. Wen Ning decided to run into this suspected revenge Lady Lan at the Li mansion tonight at midnight. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Not talking about martial virtue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Not talking about martial virtue. Black moon and high wind, haunted night. Wen Ning and three others appeared near the rockery where they died in autumn and summer. A cool breeze swept in, making the three of them shiver with cold. It's already midnight, why hasn't this ghost come yet? Wen Ning looked up at the sky, dark clouds covering the moon, and the red light hanging on the corridor was faintly visible. Miss Wenning, do you really think we can meet Mrs. Lan like this? Zhang Sanhuan hugged his arms and trembled as he spoke. Wen Ning looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, revealing a touch of vicissitudes. Maybe. Zhang San fell silent and looked up at the starry sky with Wen Ning. Li Manju was speechless to the two of them, and as she turned her head, the originally quiet corridor suddenly became lively and bustling. Startled, Li Manju frantically patted Zhang San's shoulder and said, "Look, look. What are you looking at?" Zhang San turned around and struck Wen Ning with the same posture. The three of them changed their clothes to the attire of the Li family at some point. "Hey, what are you three doing here? It's so important for the young master to get married, and you're still slacking off. Hurry up and send this thing over." The man speaking was about 40 years old, with a slight burden on his back and wearing a navy blue robe, which looked a bit like the young Tian Shu. He handed over the object in his hand to Zhang San and Li Manju, and said, "Hurry up." Wen Ning was supposed to leave with the two of them, but was stopped when he passed by Tian Shu Can. She stopped and let Uncle Tian scrutinize. "What's your name?" "Autumn and Summer," Wen Ning replied with a low eyebrow and a pleasing expression, apologizing in her heart. "Sorry, Qiusha. Can you lend me your name first?" "Okay, then you come with me." Uncle Tian nodded and led Wen Ning to the door of the room with the double happiness posted on it. "Here we are, go inside." Wen Ning looked at the pair of dragon and phoenix candles lit inside the room and whispered, "Servant, it's better not to go in." Unexpectedly, Tian Shi pushed her forward and closed the door behind her, with smooth movements as if he had done it 1,000 times. "If I tell you to go in, you go in. Wen Ning slammed into the door panel and fell silent. She tried to push the door, but when she found it locked, she gave up the idea of going out through the door. Wen Ning turned around to observe the situation inside the house. Except for the red dates, walnuts, and burning dragon and phoenix candles placed directly at the entrance, everything was normal. As she walked towards the house, she lifted the hanging curtain and saw the red toe of her shoes, followed by the green edge of her skirt with a soft yellow background. Her gaze slowly shifted upwards, and the first thing that caught her eye was the peony red long coat outlined with golden thread, as well as the 4-in-1 Rui Cloud shoulder embroidered with intricate patterns, with a layer of red and white gauze covering her head. The bride sat on the wedding bed with her eyes lightly closed, as if hearing someone coming. Her eyelashes moved slightly and she slowly opened her eyes. With her eyes flickering and her eyes shining brightly, she should be the one speaking. Did Uncle Tian come to tie my husband's hair for me? When came for some unknown reason, Ning said, yes. The bride heard with a bright smile and said, Uncle Tian really did as I said. He found a beautiful girl. Come on, let me have a good look. The originally dignified bride suddenly stood up and rubbed her warm face, looking left and right. Perfect and flawless, I feel a bit happy looking at it, but I don't know if that young master from the Li family looks good or not. Wen Ning. The bride is a beautiful dog with emotions. Suddenly hearing the noisy noise outside, the bride immediately stopped and sat on the bed, her movements flowing like clouds and water, as if everything just now was an illusion. The door of the new house was pushed open, and the groom entered. The groom did not disappoint the bride's expectations and was also extremely good-looking, with a resemblance between his eyebrows and the sickly Li Shaokong. Following the groom were the matchmaker and Li Manju holding a tray. At the hair-tying stage of the wedding, Wen Ning followed the matchmaker's lyrics and rigidly cut off a strand of hair from both the bride and groom, then put it into a red cloth bag as a gesture of propriety. Afterwards, she and Li Manju withdrew. Wen Ning gave a glance to Li Manju and exchanged information in a deserted place. Li Manju said, tonight is the wedding of Li Qingming, the eldest young master of the Li family, and Zhang Huilan, the third miss of the Zhang family. Both of them are famous billionaires in Xinhua town. This wave belongs to a commercial alliance, and there is no emotional connection. Zhang Huilan, Yan Go. Li Manju was shocked, is that all? Wen Ning shrugged helplessly, knowing that in the room she was in, all she could come into contact with was Yan Go, the bride. By the way, what about Zhang San? Wen Ning suddenly reacted and Zhang San was missing. Speak of the devil. A figure, Zhang Huang, ran towards him in a panic. Zhang San, dressed in uncomfortable maid clothes, bent over and gasped for breath. You're really here, he said, I just ate an amazing gourd. Wen Ning and Li Manju exchanged a glance, their eyes excited. Even though the current situation was not right, Wen Ning still said, let's talk about it. When Li Qingming was drinking in the vestibule, he was flirting with a woman. Not long after the woman left, Li Qingming left. I thought something was wrong, so I followed her up. Guess what? Zhang San spoke of this with disdain all over his eyes, this man actually had a rendezvous with that woman. After my multiple inquiries, that woman was actually the bride's cousin. Pooh, scumbag. Wen Ning couldn't help but curse out loud on the spot. Lower your head, Li Manju agreed, so they hooked up so early. A gloomy sentence rang from behind Zhang San, and Zhang San turned around to find Zhang Huilan, dressed in wedding clothes, staring blankly at him with her head tilted. Zhang San was so frightened that he hugged Wen Ning directly. At hashtag $% Li Manju's language system was so chaotic that she almost fainted, and Wen Ning quickly held on to her waist. So you were lying to me from the beginning. Zhang Huilan murmured as bright red blood flowed from her eyes, and her once beautiful face suddenly became terrifying. She looked at Wen Ning with a hint of confusion and asked, do you think I'm not good-looking enough? No, you look great, Wen Ning said sternly. Why did he take a liking to my cousin? Why? Why do you say so? With Zhang Huilan's angry questioning and the strong winds surrounding her, the bustling scene of the Li mansion instantly returned to its original appearance. Wait. Wen Ning raised her hand with a solemn expression. Sisters, is there a possibility that this scum man is blind? Zhang Huilan's anger abruptly came to an end. Really? I feel the same way, too. Wen Ningchang breathed a sigh of relief and looked comfortingly at the two trembling people hiding next to her. We are temporarily safe. Zhang San and Li Manju. It's done. The next second, Zhang Huilan's sharp voice sounded, I can tolerate him not loving me, I can accept him and the Zhang family teaming up to harm me, but why did he want to kill my child with that slut? That's also his child. Why do you say he did it? Ah, this gone, I'm not Li Qingming. How do I know? Wen Ning's silence successfully stimulated Zhang Huilan, and she angrily scolded, since you don't answer, then go to hell. Wen Ning and the others looked bewildered. In a fit of rage, Zhang San blurted out, You. If you don't speak of martial arts, you'll catch me with a lightning strike. The last opportunity to use a skill card was thrown away, and when Zhang San saw lightning lightly tickling Zhang Huilan, he regretted it. Zhang Huilan's eyes turned cold as she said, Wuda is what you humans talk about, you can't control the deceit. That makes sense. Wen Ning fully agrees with Zhang Huilan's viewpoint. Now is the time to say this. Li Manju, who threw out her invincible skill card, grabbed Wen Ning's shoulder and shook it wildly. This is my last chance to use my skill card. Please be clear-headed, this is not the time to agree. Clash, the shield is broken. Wen Ning's eyes were sharp as she stood in front of Li Manju and whispered, playing cotton, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Truly. Halo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Truly. Halo card play a piece of cotton usage. 0/2, during the performance of the song, no matter how Zhang Huilan attacks, she will definitely avoid Wen Ning 100%. Wen Ning stood still and protected Zhang San and Li Manju behind her, until the last melody fell and three different voices came out. Who is singing and playing cotton? It's me. The situation became complicated in an instant. Zhang Huilan furrowed her brows lightly, and saw the three tricks in front of her looking at Wen Ning. Is this a new spell? Wen Ning said, last time we played mahjong without a winner, and everyone wanted my face. Now there's a great opportunity for you to fight with her, whoever wins will take it away. 748 Indigenous Strange People, Pink Cloth Strange, Water Ghost. There's such a good thing. San Gui looked in the direction of Wen Ning's fingers, and at the moment he saw Zhang Huilan, his momentum suddenly dropped and his kneeling position was very skilled. What's that? I thought my mirror was on fire, so I'll leave first. The 748 indigenous strangers found a reason to escape. The water ghost knelt down and kowtowed, the moon is too bright tonight, and I'm about to be dried in the sun. Sir, I'll leave first. After the water ghost finished speaking, he ran away directly, leaving only Fen Yigui to confront Zhang Huilan. Oh, you're the only one left. Are you trying to fight me alone? Zhang Huilan proudly lifted her chin and looked down at Fen Yigui. The woman in pink didn't look for reasons to escape like the previous two, but instead quickly pulled out her intestines and tied herself up, saying, I'm sorry to bother you, I'll get out of here. Then roll it round and thick like a period. In this scene, Wen Ning couldn't help but speak out. 6. Zhang Huilan blinked and appeared in front of Wen Ning, forcefully squeezing her chin and looking around. This face is really beautiful. According to your statement, I won, and this face belongs to me, she said. Fingertips slid back and forth on Wen Ning's face, and Zhang Huilan chuckled lightly, but it still looks good on you. Her eyes flickered as she looked at Zhang San and Li Manju, who were trembling behind Wen Ning's body. Her eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a hint of coldness. I prefer beauties, let's do it this way. If you randomly choose one of these two people to die, I'll let you and the other go. Zhang Huilan released her grip on Wen Ning's chin and tenderly supported her shoulder, turning her around. Her entire body was almost pressed against Wen Ning's back. Come on, who should we choose? Wen Ning lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes covering all her thoughts in the depths of her eyes. Zhang San and Li Manju didn't care about the male and female guards tightly hugging each other, and their bodies were covered in words. Weak, pitiful, helpless, and even whimpering. After a long absence of Wen Ning's choice, Zhang Huilan's temper skyrocketed, her wedding dress swayed in the wind, and a cold atmosphere filled the entire rockery. A pair of eerie eyes looked at the trembling two of them, and Zhang Huilan's red lips curled up. She approached Wen Ning's ear and asked, "Why can't we let go?" Upon hearing these words, Zhang San and Li Manju stared at Wen Ning with tears in their eyes. Tears were about to burst out, but they had to hold back because of Wen Ning's next words. "No, I'm just struggling." Wen Ning looked up at the fish and meat waiting to be slaughtered on the chopping board and asked, "Why don't we kill both of them?" Zhang Huilan was stunned for a moment before laughing wildly. "Listen, is this human language? But I like it. But they don't seem to like it very much, Wen Ning. I didn't expect that Zhang San would also take a look one day. How could you do this? We are teammates." Li Manju cried out in anger. Wen Ning turned her head and a hint of confusion flashed in her eyes. "We just came together and stayed for 7 days. Why do you think we're teammates? You're so strange, I don't believe you're this kind of person. You've saved me several times." Li Manju stared at Wen Ning with tearful eyes, trying to find a flaw in her face. "Ah, you're talking about this. Of course, rescuing you is to make you act as a cushion in a critical moment. Is it difficult to understand? I don't believe it." Li Manju cried and shook her head, while Zhang San said with an iron grudge, "Miss Li, this is not the time for a romantic brain. She wants us to die." Wen Ning agreed with Zhang Sandi's statement and said with a smile in her eyes, What a lawless fanatic said is right. Don't have a love brain and don't easily trust people. So your choice is?" Zhang Huilan hugged Wen Ning from behind and asked excitedly. "So I choose." Wen Ning looked up at Zhang Huilan with sincere eyes. "Choose me." Zhang San answered quickly, "Let Miss Li live." Wen Ning glanced at him lightly and spat out 2 words, "Draw a card." The word "draw card" appears, and all things in the world, except for warm lime, are prohibited. Ding Dong Xiaowei has received your request. Player Wen Ning chooses to draw cards, and your current saved cards are January 10th confirmed to use. Okay. The white camellia bloomed in the hand of the warm lemon, and a brilliant diamond-shaped card fell into her palm. Skill card White Moonlight Halo Usage Conditions. Wearing it, you will be the white moonlight of all the male monsters in the entire dungeon, and they will do their best to protect you. Usage. As long as it is not damaged, it can be reused. Congratulations to player Wen Ning for obtaining rare skill cards. 1. Use them now. 2. Keep the card pack, please choose 1. Use immediately. When Wen Ning chooses to use it, this skill card instantly turns into a black headband, with 2 springs attached to the top of the headband, and the tips of the springs connected to the 5 characters, White Moonlight Halo. From a top-down perspective of Wen Ning holding a headband, these 5 characters appear in a counterclockwise 90 degrees C shape. When she wore it on her head according to the usage conditions, the 5 big characters, White Moonlight Halo, instantly emitted a moonlight glow. You have used the skill card White Moonlight Halo. Xiao Wei wishes you a pleasant game here. Wen Ning fell silent, true White Moonlight Halo. She had a 1000 W White Moonlight Halo above her head, which blinded Zhang Huilan and kept her 5 steps away from her. Zhang San blinked, as if he had just heard the word draw card. Upon seeing the light above Wen Ning's head, Zhang San shed tears and hugged her thigh, saying, "It was my little one who misunderstood you. Sister, you are my only sister." Li Manju was happier than Zhang San. She wiped away her tears and said, "I knew you were a good person." "No, I'm not." Wen Ning quickly denied it. "Damn it, what did you do?" Zhang Huilan covered her eyes and roared angrily. In an instant, dark clouds covered her, and her crimson eyes glared angrily at Wen Ning. "Ah, can't you tell?" Wen Ning calmly pointed to the 5 words on her finger, "Wear a halo." Zhang Huilan felt like she was being played with and leaned over to kill Wen Ning. At this critical moment, Li Qingming, also dressed in joyful attire, merged his hands and knelt on one knee to restrain Zhang Huilan's attack. The slender fingernails were only 1 millimeter away from Wen Ning's nose tip. Wen Ning looked at Li Qingming, whose body was greenish-gray, and made a weathered cigarette lighting gesture, saying heavily, "What a sin." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Pursuing Stimulus, Implementing It to the End. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Pursuing Stimulus, Implementing It to the End. #shocked, the reason why the newlyweds fought fiercely against a woman was actually because of it. Is it a distortion of deceit or a decline in morality? #2 eerie fights, the scene is amazing. When Ningtu shifted back and forth in the direction of the 2 mysterious struggles, and finally moved away from the battlefield, closing the door. It has been proven that a qualified X should be like dead, even if it's weird. When Ning removed her skill card and immediately looked up to see the collapsed bed, twisted copper mirror, and dirty ground. She used round stools arranged in a straight line as a bed board to make up for the night in order to sleep. The next day was the 3rd day when the 3 of them arrived in Xinhua town. The door of the room was pushed open, and what caught the eye was the serene appearance of Wen Ning with her hands folded over her chest, closing her eyes peacefully. Zhang San and Li Manju performed mourning on the spot. Wen Ning opened her eyes and said irritably, "If you cry again, just sew your mouths together." The 2 of them turned off their microphones on the spot. Wen Ning falls asleep right away. The 2 looked at each other, and Zhang San's spiritual light flashed as he pulled Li Manju down to the corner and whispered, "I understand. This is Sister Ning testing us." Li Manju. Wen Ning. Zzz, last night, Wen Ning's deceitful words were actually warning us. Li Manju. Wen Ning. Zzz, we think independently, she won't bring useless people. Sister Ning sleeping now is actually giving us an opportunity to grow. Li Manju. Wen Ning. Zzz, we must not let Sister Ning down. Oh. Zhang San and Li Manju clapped their hands and swore, then left here with a strong and spirited demeanor. Wen Ning was awakened again by Li Manju's exclamation, and as she watched their graceful departure, she felt that there were too many friends on the small question mark. After a short period of confusion, Wen Ning plans to wander around the Li mansion at will and try to tell the sisters about Zhang Huilan. She wandered aimlessly around the Li mansion, and not far away, she almost wrote the big characters, "I'm suspicious, follow me quickly," on Li Shaokang's face, making Wen Ning's expression complicated. The 2 passed by, but Wen Ning was stopped by Li Shaokang. "Miss Wen." Before he could finish speaking, Wen Ning covered her ears and closed her eyes. "Oh, why isn't there anyone in the Li mansion today?" 1. Oh my, the wind today is really noisy. Wen Ning spoke to herself and stumbled away from here, only to accidentally bump into a wall. She kicked the wall in anger and left in a huff. Li Shaokang smiled and shook his head before leaving. After he left, Wen Ning poked her head from behind the wall. Joke, would she step on such an obvious pit? Then she walked towards the opposite direction of the gate and strolled over the road where Li Shaokang was walking. She picked up a nearby branch casually and slowly walked towards the ancestral hall with her cat on her waist. Wen Ning gently pressed her ear against the window and couldn't help but get closer after hearing the commotion. But the sound of pushing the door rang, and Wen Ning could only quickly dodge. Waiting for Li Shaokong's figure to disappear, Wen Ning came out to investigate. Wen Ning pushed open the door and saw plaques belonging to the Li family arranged neatly, with incense burners on the altar still adorned with the incense that Li Shaokong had just lit. Just the candlestick next to the incense burner, stained with incense ash, clearly told her that there was a problem here. Suddenly, a chill surged into Wen Ning's heart, and Li Shaokong was intentional. Exciting, she likes it. Wen Ning smiled and helped the candlestick rotate. A tunnel appeared on the floor, which was the sound she had just overheard. Wen Ning walked down with an excited heart and a candle. This is a pitch-black passage, and the distance that Wen Ning can see is the distance that candlelight can illuminate. The narrow space has no end in front, and the back is engulfed by darkness. The only thing that can be heard is the sound of footsteps made by walking. Dada, dada. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Wen Ning saw a faint light not far away and understood that the truth was not far away. Countless red ropes intertwined and woven into a huge net, enveloping a space of only 20 square meters. The red rope is tied with octagonal bells, and a bright yellow paper symbol hangs below the octagonal bells. Underneath this huge net are a group of petite young men and girls, kneeling around the coffin like tribute. Inside the coffin, a woman in a red wedding dress sleeps. Wen Ning walked up and took a look. Zhang Huilan. Zhang Huilan, who died 20 years ago, surprisingly did not decay. Zhang Huilan suddenly opened her eyes and was frightened, causing Wen Ning to quickly leave the land of trouble. After Wen Ning left, the young men and girls who were originally paying tribute to the coffin turned their heads and stared at the pitch-black passage, showing a strange smile. As soon as she returned to the room, she saw two unidentified objects lying beside the table. Zhang San felt refreshed when he saw Wen Ning coming back. He is like a golden feather seeking praise again. Sister Ning, we have found something. The two of them lifted Wen Ning's arm and quickly left the Li mansion with her. A gust of wind blew by, rolling up a fallen leaf. Wen Ning looked up at the Zhang mansion with the seal attached and cautiously made a question mark. Are you here? Trigger the plot. Make the main line. Wen Ning. So what? Zhang San pushed Wen Ning to the door and pointed to the seal, saying, this is a seal. So. It's still an old and disrepair seal. Just gently push the door and see, the seal is useless. Wen Ning's mouth twitched and said, don't be awkward, Zhang San. Alright, Sister Ning, please. The two stood at the door like welcoming ladies, motionless. Wen Ning glanced at the two of them and said, why don't you guys go in? We've been inside before, but we're afraid we'll just glance and come out. The two of them answered in unison, with a calm but vigorous tone. Wen Ning laughed angrily as she picked up the collars of the two of them and said, together. If you want to pursue excitement, then stick to it to the end, right? It is said that twisted melon is not sweet, but Wen Ning thinks it is quite sweet, especially seeing the frightened expressions of Li Manju and Zhang San. Relax, it's daylight now. Who is so afraid of death? Wen Ning smiled to comfort, while Zhang San and Li Manju's expressions changed. They raised their hands trembling and pointed not far away, unable to utter a word. Wen Ning's body froze, wouldn't it? She mechanically turned around and her expression suddenly changed. Uncle Tian's body hung like a puppet on the thickest branch, with a pair of eyes protruding and staring big. His left shoe went missing, and there were multiple abrasions on his body, indicating that he had struggled violently before dying. Wen Ning quickly glanced around and, while searching for the lost shoes, seemed to have hit something on her head. She bent down to pick up a shoe covered in blood. Wen Ning's eyes darkened slightly as she approached to compare them with the shoes worn by Tian Shu's corpse. When Uncle Tian's feet were not too big or too small and just closed, Wen Ning's hands couldn't help but tremble. Ning. Sister Ning, didn't you say that Gui wouldn't come out in broad daylight? There are exceptions to everything, don't panic. Why do you need to wear a white moonlight halo? Hey. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. FBI, open the door. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 FBI, open the door. Wen Ning's movement of putting on the headband is faster. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time. I'm preparing in advance. I cried to death. Li Manju covered her mouth, able to perfunctory but still found a decent excuse. Zhang San was unable to appreciate the meaning behind it, and was deeply moved. Sister Ning, you're so kind. Wen Ning. The three of them had just crossed the threshold with their front feet when suddenly they spun around. Isothermal Ning opened her eyes and found herself wearing coarse servant clothes. Her sleeves rolled over her elbows, and she squatted on the side of the yard with a bucket in one hand and a brush in the other. Fall. Wen Ning angrily threw the brush, and after 3 seconds, she honestly picked it up and started brushing smoothly. She couldn't understand why the game triggered the plot so casually. Thinking about it, Wen Ning quickened her movements and followed the other rough maids to carry the bucket and leave. Passing by the long corridor, a man with suspicious movements and a pockmarked face lit up when he saw Wen Ning. He rushed towards Wen Ning like a starving tiger, breaking hard 3 steps away. Wen Ning looked at her cautiously and said, "Who?" "It's me, Li Manju." Ma Zi said anxiously. Wen Ning glanced suspiciously. No matter how he looked, it was all a man. After hesitating for a while, she said, "Palace Jade Liquor. 180.1 cups." The two of them clapped their hands and Wen Ning said calmly, "It turns out it's true. Walking here is not a place to talk." Wen Ning put down the bucket with a foul smell and led Li Manju to a hidden place. Li Manju pinched her nose and took 2 steps back, saying, "Sister Ning, I've finally found you." "How do you know it's me?" "I'm different from what I used to look like." Faced with Wen Ning's questioning, Li Manju looked serious and said, "You can insult my personality, but you cannot insult my intelligence. I am literate." She pointed to Wen Ning's head, and Wen Ning looked up. The white light was very dazzling. "The halo is still there, very good. Where's Zhang San?" Li Manju shook her head and said, "I searched around but couldn't find it, but I found out that this is Zhang's mansion." "Zhang mansion?" Wen Ning pondered. "When I woke up, I was brushing the toilet. After my observation, I found that all the servants were doing their own jobs, and it was easy to find one less, so we couldn't talk much. Now I'm going back to my respective positions to inquire about Zhang San's news. See you here tonight." Upon hearing these words, Li Manju held a deep respect for the departing figure of Wen Ning. Wen Ning skillfully climbed over the fence, calmly picked up the buckets, and walked at the end of the group of servants transporting the buckets. As she followed the queue and placed buckets one by one, she heard 2 servants sweeping the floor in the courtyard gossiping that it was the only young master of the Zhang family who had snatched a woman from the street. Women. Wen Ning was puzzled and perked up her ears to listen more attentively until a voice came from behind, "What are you still doing there?" She just ran over and let go of the toilet. The moon gradually climbed up to the treetops, and when Ning arrived at the place where she had talked in the morning and saw Li Manju wandering in place. "Sister Ning." Li Manju shouted anxiously in a low voice, "What should I do? I didn't find Zhang San, he wouldn't die." Before she could finish speaking, Wen Ning reached out to block her mouth and led her behind the rockery. The lights flickered, and Li Manju curled up in Wen Ning's arms. Looking up, she could clearly see the pores on Wen Ning's face. The scent of Wen Ning lingered around her, leaving her at a loss. Finally, Li Manju couldn't help but vomit on Wen Ning. "Stinky, it's really too smelly." Wen Ning apologized for this and glanced at Li Manju, then continued to observe the 4 people walking nearby. They vigorously lifted a woman wrapped in brocade, with her head tilted to reveal her slender neck. One of them muttered, "Another one, the last one died, and the young master hasn't restrained himself yet." "Hi, stop talking." The young master was supposed to go in, but it was the old master who cleared the way so that the young master could come back safely. The other person continued. "Tisk, stop talking, this person is about to fall. Use your strength. 1, 2, 3. Under the lifting of this group of people, their sideways faces were exposed. Zhang San. It's actually Zhang San. Wen Ning's pupils are tightening, I can't believe it. She pushed Li Manju, who was vomiting on the side, and asked her to confirm as well. Two people looked at each other and saw 3 words in each other's eyes. You have died young. They followed closely behind at the speed of monkey brother rushing to the sea, afraid of going too late, and Zhang San's innocence was gone. With a heart-wrenching sound, Wen Ning forcefully kicked open the door and said, "FBI, open the door." Zhang San flicked his hair and looked back. In the moment of seeing the white moonlight halo again, he withdrew his foot from the middle path of the Zhang family's young master and rushed towards Wen Ning, crying like a little daughter. Lol. Sister Ning. He sniffed a few times beside Wen Ning while speaking, his expression twisted. What's the smell? The smell left by me brushing the bucket. Warm and thoughtful reminder. No wonder it smells so fragrant. Li Manju, who came panting to hear this conversation, was even more shocked. Worship would make people lose their sense of smell. He bullied me, Zhang San said in an extremely coquettish voice, ignoring the gaze of others when Ning glanced at the young master of the Zhang family, who was bleeding from his head and still covering his lower body, and nodded, affirming, "It's really damn. I feel like if we wait any longer, this young master will die." Who are you, sleeping trough? Zhang San saw Li Manju and exclaimed in surprise. After some chanting, Zhang San laughed heartily and said, "Miss Li, you didn't expect it to be you." He sat on the chair casually, pouring himself a glass of water and sighing, "Gender exchange, it's so terrifying. If I had known, I would have stayed obediently in the Li mansion." Speaking of which, Wen Ning remembered that Xiao Wei didn't mean to live for 7 days. At first, she wanted to get stuck with a bug, but failed to enter Xinghua town. Thinking that everyone has come, let's find some exciting gameplay. What about these two? The game has a survival period of 7 days for passing the level, and you can survive. With Wen Ning's words, 2 high octaves were heard. How can it be? Why do you think so? Sister Ning, have you really given up on us? Li Manju's eyes lit up with a hint of injury, her body swaying and falling to the ground at any moment. Sister Ning, rest assured that we are very useful. Zhang San slapped his chest and shouted loudly, "We are not the kind of ungrateful villains, we are a team." Wen Ning moved her lips and continued to speak, only to see Li Manju placing the cup in her throat at some point, as if she would commit suicide with just one more sentence. Okay, I won't say it anymore. Wen Ning compromised, but next time, we need to act a bit more like someone who committed suicide by holding a whole cup against it. Okay, Sister Ning. Li Manju awkwardly touched her nose bridge when Ning sighed and squatted down to observe the young master of the Zhang family. "TSK, you hit quite hard, it's truly Zhang San. It's necessary." Zhang San looked up proudly and received a hot chestnut from Wen Ning. "I have inquired, this person is the only Miao in the Zhang family. If you beat him like this, he will definitely die if found. If this game dies, he won't be able to survive. So, what should we do?" Zhang San trembled with fear upon hearing this. Wen Ning, carrying the light behind her back, snorted lightly and answered coldly, "Of course it's a special group inside." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Daqing Oilfield has no oil from you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Daqing Oilfield has no oil from you. What? What? Wen Ning didn't look at Zhang San's frightened face. Instead, she searched around and found the murder weapon that Zhang San used to knock people. A blood-stained vase. Under the bed. She struggled to pull out the vase and struck the head of the young master of the Zhang family with a fierce hammer. The young master of the Zhang family twitched his feet 3 times and eventually lost his breath. Wen Ning threw away the vase and glanced at the frightened two. If he lives, we will die. If he dies, we may live, she said. They all understood the reason, but they didn't expect Wen Ning to kill as soon as he said so. Let's go. With a command, the two of them followed Wen Ning like quails. Before taking a few steps, Wen Ning stopped, vigilantly staring at the dim corridor not far away. The unknown creature was crawling in the dark and twisted corridor, and only when it approached did Wen Ning recognize it as one of the people carrying Zhang San. The man reached out to Wen Ning and muttered, "Blood, third Mississippi, come back." The person loses their breath before they finish speaking. I remember the third lady from Zhang's mansion seems to be Zhang Huilan. Ah. Zhang San covered her cheeks in fear. She said it. The cold and gloomy aura gradually spread to the feet of Wen Ning, causing thunder and lightning to split open the nearby trees. Wen Ning turned her head to look at the night sky, with no rain and thunder. Oh, brag and show off. She sneered inwardly and turned around to stick with Zhang Huilan. You look so ugly. Wen Ning _. At that time, Zhang Huilan was dressed in a goose yellow plain-cut qipao, with red lips and white teeth, and a pair of legs. The turquoise purple around her neck and a pool of blood on her chest added a sense of fragmentation to her. She grinned and said, I originally wanted to kill everyone in Zhang's mansion, but... Zhang Huilan gently wiped off the blood stains on Wen Ning's face and said, You killed the person I want to kill. I'm happy, I let you go. Really? Wen Ning asked calmly. Yes, before I change my mind. As soon as Zhang Huilan finished speaking, she noticed that the other person had climbed up the wall from before her eyes, waved her hand at her, and quickly disappeared. Behind the fence, Wen Ning rolled on the ground with her feet covered. She had originally planned to give a grand farewell, but she couldn't find a place to stay and twisted her foot. Li Manju and Zhang Sanqi both covered their eyes and said they didn't see. Cough, mistake. Wen Ning cleared her clothes and coughed lightly, let's go. Wait. Where is this? I didn't escape from Zhang's mansion as I imagined, but instead entered another mansion. The other two shook their heads and said, Don't ask, I don't know. Hello, you guys. Familiar with the operation and process, Wen Ning has reason to suspect that the next time she goes to another mansion, she will still start in this way. Wen Ning helplessly turned around and looked at the talking grandmother. When Grandma saw Wen Ning, she was truly amazed. She pointed at Wen Ning and said, It's you, come with me to the master's place. After speaking, Mammy grabbed Wen Ning's hand and dragged her away. Wait. Mammy's strength was so strong that no matter how hard Wen Ning struggled, she couldn't break free. Instead, she received an eye knife from the other party. Be honest, serving the master is your blessing, some people can't even ask for it. Wen Ning felt like there was a panda man with a question mark all over his head when he opened his hand. Blessings. Do you want this blessing for you? She grabbed the grandmother's wrist with her backhand and bent it forcefully. Oh, it hurts. The grandma twisted her body and shouted loudly. Wen Ning frowned and reached out to pull off the grandmother's belt to tie her up. She also took off the other person's socks to block her moaning mouth and kicked her to the ground. Now I'll ask you a question, you answer a question, and if you call someone, I'll strip off your clothes. Do you understand? The nanny nodded wildly, and the cry for help reached her throat, only missing her socks. Help! The shouting came to an abrupt end, and the sharp hairpin tail rushed towards her and stopped in front of her eyes. The nanny, sweating profusely, looked at the smiling Wen Ning and swallowed her saliva. What Li Manju and Zhang San, who arrived late, saw was this kind of scene. Wen Ning is like the biggest villain in romance novels, questioning the stubborn and unyielding old white flower. Where is this? Who is the master? Why do we need someone to serve us? This is the county magistrate's mansion. The master's surname is Wang. The master was just bitten by Lady Lan and was about to get angry. He wanted to find another person to show Lady Lan his strength. Mrs. Lan is not with the Li family. I know that Mrs. Lan was sent over by her husband and the Zhang family together. Li. I also know this question. The master may have benefited both the Zhang and Li families, but coincidentally, the young master of the Li family was involved with Lady Lan's cousin, and both sides colluded in collusion. Old. First, turn left along this corridor, then turn right, and then turn left to reach Mrs. Lan's room. The master should still be there. Not to mention anything else, the nanny answered very quickly, even drawing analogies. Wen Ning admires it. Do you have anything else to ask? Mammy carefully glanced at Wen Ning. It's gone. Wen Ning smiled brightly, and under the surprised gaze of Zhang San and Li Manju, her hairpin pierced the grandmother's throat with great precision. Li Manju's face turned pale. Ning. Sister Ning, isn't this good? Only the dead are the safest. This kind of tiring work should be done by me. Zhang San. Sigma, mouth, Miss Li, how dare you? Let go of that old white flower and let me bury it. Zhang San, who was already taking a slow step, rolled up his sleeves and started digging. When he showed value, he would never lose to anyone. Wen Ning's tactic is to tilt back. Is this also a role? She quickly interrupted the casting and said, wait, don't be busy digging for now. It's important to save people. It's important to save Gui. The two immediately put down their burdens and followed Wen Ning to the scene according to the route suggested by the grandmother. It's still a bit late, Mr. Wang has already succeeded. He tightened his belt and patted his seemingly 10-month-old belly, satisfied as he opened the door, facing Zhang San, who was forced to change into women's clothing. After changing the scene, the three of them returned to their original appearance, originally discussing the beauty plan to save people. Zhang San disagrees with this proposal and immediately puts himself on the board, saying that he cannot let girls face scum. He looked back seductively and cast a seductive glance at Mr. Wang. Zhang San. Omicron equals Omega smiley face row Wen Ning hiding in the dark. Damn it, not bad. Normal human thinking, Li Manju. Mouth area. Abnormal Mr. Wang. Beauty, hee, beauty, asterisk, come on, grandpa. Zhang San hooked his hand at Mr. Wang, deliberately revealing his shoulder. Mr. Wang swallowed his saliva and strode towards Zhang San, grabbing his shiny thick lips and leaning against his face. Zhang San's heart collapsed, and his backhand was like a punch. Your grandfather, Daqing Oilfield, is not as oily as you. The rough and wild voice shook Mr. Wang's tiger body. You're a man. It's your dad, I'm right. I love it even more. Animal. Zhang San wrapped his hands around his chest and cursed from the bottom of his heart. Mr. Wang had a lewd smile and rushed forward regardless of his appearance. Wen Ning swung a knife from behind, causing Mr. Wang to faint. She coldly dragged the bloated Mr. Wang into the room and saw Zhang Huilan, who was preparing to cut himself with a small knife, reaching out Kong's hand. Wait, Huilan. Zhang Huilan didn't hesitate to stab herself. End of this chapter.